Imagine you could get all of your families together in the gym, just doing all kinds of folk dances and play parties and just making music and moving together. How amazing would that be?
You're listening to That Music Podcast with Bryson Tarbett, the curriculum designer and educational consultant behind That Music Teacher and the Elementary Music Summit. Each week, Bryson and his guests will dive into the reality of being an elementary music teacher and how music can truly be transformative in the lives of the students you serve. Show notes and resources mentioned in this episode can be found at thatmusicteacher.com.
Hello and welcome back to That Music Podcast. I'm really excited to dive in today about my family folk dance night that I started doing last year. So if you haven't listened to episode 87 of the podcast, definitely go back and listen to that, because that kind of talks about my initial reaction to it, how I did it the first time, and kind of why I was working on it and why I decided to make that shift. So today I'm going to talk about what I'm going through and kind of the process that I'm taking to create this year's folk dance. So for those of you that haven't listened to episode 87, I do a third grade folk dance night every November, late November, early December, depending on where the concert lies. I love doing this. I've always done a lot of movement and activities. Even before I shifted my performances to this way, I was doing a lot of these activities. And by shifting my performance towards a family folk dance night, it really has kind of made me get creative and find some new folk dances and play parties and things like that that I wouldn't necessarily have sought out had I not made this shift. So what does it look like to have a family folk dance night? What I love about it is it really, like, setup wise, is so simple. I essentially have chairs set up around the perimeter of the gym, and then the big old empty gymnasium is kind of what we use as a performance. So last year I had my little Britney Spears mic on so that I could kind of talk from where I was. This year we've upgraded our sound system, thank goodness, so I'll be able to use a wireless mic that doesn't make me look kind of foolish. But I essentially become the caller, or kind of talking through why we're doing this with the parents. So for instance, if we were going to come in and do an activity, I would talk about, why are we doing folk dances? Because there's a lot of reasons why I do folk dances. They are another way for students to explore music, especially music of different cultures a lot of times. But it also is really good for formal analysis and hearing, and not counting, all right, we're going to do 8 steps this way and 8 steps that way, but hearing how that changes in the music and hearing how the different phrases work together. Those are some really good standards that are there. So what I actually do is I actually print out some of these standards on basically as many as that I can put on my the program, like depending on how many kids are on the class list or things like that. I might have more room at the bottom than others, but I like to put in there a very parent friendly language why we're doing this, because yes, it looks cool, yes, the kids are having fun, but there are a lot of musical concepts that we're going through, and I want the parents to know that. I want them to know that it might look fun, and it is fun, but it isn't just for fun. And I think that's something that we as music teachers can sometimes overcorrect on. We like to make us known that we are, we're doing real music. And sometimes we forget to just be really honest and say sometimes doing real music just looks like having fun, because it is. It doesn't necessarily need to look as rigorous as it actually is on the inside. So I actually started preparing for this performance actually last year in second grade, because I want my students to have a lot of repertoire. And when I say repertoire, I mean a lot of movement repertoire. And if I'm being honest, I've been doing movement repertoire all the way since kindergarten in one way or another, because I'd already had that positive experience with a third grade performance last year, which, full transparency, was just a test to see if it would work. I knew that I wanted to have a lot more for my third grade performance this year. So at the end of last year, I did a lot of movement and play parties and folk dances with my second graders, because I knew, all right, I need them to have this repertoire. Even if we didn't necessarily do the play party, maybe we learned the song and did something else with it, or some ways so that I didn't have to teach everything brand new. Some things we could kind of like take out of the vault and show off maybe in a new way, or in a way that we haven't shared before. Something that I think we forget a lot of times when we're doing movement activities like folk dances and things like that is that we need to sequence that as well. We can't expect them to be doing these really complicated movements if they can't make a circle. So how there, in my curriculum, I have a lot of musical concepts that go throughout the different years, but I also like to think of different movement things. Like, when am I going to teach them? When are we going to learn about a long way set? Kindergarten, first grade, making a circle is a big thing. Maybe sometimes into second grade, making a circle is another thing, but those are kind of the big things that I really want to work on. Second grade into third grade, we start doing things like long way sets, which, if you don't know, are just two parallel lines that are facing each other. It's a common setup in a lot of play parties. So how can we give them that vocabulary of things so that we're not starting from scratch every time? So every single time my students get a long way set, and I don't care if they've been doing it forever, I always have them repeat what is this formation called? And if they don't know, then I tell them. But if they do know, we either way, whether they know it or not, we say a long way set, and everyone says long way set. And then we say two parallel lines. It's just another way of showing that, another way of getting them exposed to it. Because what I love about this is, if we've already learned Pop Pop Act, which is a really cool play party, and I want to teach Alabama Gal, I don't have to go through the whole process of, all right, we need two parallel lines. They need to be facing to each other. They need to be equal height. I can say, all right, make me a long way set. And after some practice, they can make me a long way set. So when you're setting yourself up, especially if you're doing a family folk dance night like I do, is make sure that you're sequencing things in order. So you're starting with the simple movements, and then you're getting to the complex movements. One of my favorite play parties is Great Big House. It is a complicated play party. But what I love about it is it's really not as complicated as it looks. It looks really complicated, and teaching it is kind of clunky. I've definitely gotten better teaching it, but it's one of those things where you just kind of have to do it. And the kids, it makes so much more sense by doing it rather than talking. So making sure that you're starting with simple things. For instance, in Great Big House, we have to make a circle. So if they don't know how to make a circle, what are those prerequisite skills? So we're not going to move on. We need to work on making a circle. They need to make sure having every other person. So have we played games or things like that where there have been every other people? Like, maybe I give a tie to every other person. That's what I use in my room. Or have we done some things where we, step side by side? What are some ways that we can make it easier when we're teaching the new thing by already giving them a vocabulary of movements for the things that they already know? So like I said, we go through the process of learning these through a long period of time. So we've been doing folk dances and play parties and things like that. Like I said, last year, but also pretty much since we've started. Started this year. I'm not saying that's all we've done, but I've been doing a lot of front loading so that we can have that vocabulary of repertoire for the performance. So the way the performances work, again, go ahead and listen to episode 87 to get my kind of initial thoughts. But the way that they're going to work this year is I'm actually changing a few things. First of all, in episode 87, I talk about the first time I had my parents and my grownups and my families. I think they joined in for like 2 or 3 different things. I want that to be more. I want them to honestly join us for most things. I want them to be able to get a really good understanding of all the different things. One thing last year, my 3rd grade class was huge. So there were certain things that we couldn't just have everybody joining us all the time, because just having the 2 3rd grade classes was just too many people in that space we were in. So now that we have a little bit of a smaller class in the current 3rd grade class, there are different activities that I'm going to be able to do. Another thing that I'll be honest, as I'm recording this, I don't know if I'm actually going to have the courage to do it, but I really want to. And I'm hoping that I do, because I think it'll be really, really cool. I think it would be absolutely so much fun for the last song or one of the activities to be brand new for the kids, brand new for the grownups, and essentially learn it together. So I'm really thinking of doing a folk song or folk dance that they've never done before. I don't know what that might be, but I want to take them through the process of learning it, of breaking it down into the chunks, of seeing how things repeat, about guessing what comes next or what is happening in the music when this happens. I think that one would just be really cool to show, but I think it's also just a really good piece of advocacy of showing that, yes, all these different things that you've seen today looks really cool and was a lot of fun. But there are so many musical concepts that are going through here, and this is how we broke it down into these different steps. So again, I'll be honest, I don't know if we'll end up doing it. That is something I really hope to do. And when I record the monthly check-in episode, I hope that I can share that we're doing that, because I just think that would be so cool to allow the grown-ups and the stakeholders to see in a little bit of a different light. So if you're thinking about doing a family folk dance night, I want to give you some practical advice. First of all, make sure the students know the different formations that you'll likely need to use. So for instance, if you're having them do a lot of things with long way set, label it as a long way set. Show them, let them know, like, hey, we're going to call this a long way set. If I ever ask you to make a long way set, this is where we're going to be. Work on some other things where there's a combination of songs that you're singing with, as well as maybe a folk dance that has a recorded accompaniment. That way you can, you're not necessarily singing the whole time, because that singing and moving is a lot. We need to give our students some time to breathe, which is another reason why every once in a while during the performance, I'll kind of take a step back and kind of walk the parents through it, the grown-ups through it, so that we're not completely getting the students out of breath, because moving is a lot. Singing and moving is a lot. So what can we do to make sure we're having a balance of, songs that are sung and songs that they're listening for? That's definitely a big tip that I would do. I definitely have learned that the hard way. And another thing that I really think would be a good really big tip is make sure that expectations are clear. So last year, when this was the first time I did it, I didn't want my grown-ups and my families to show up thinking it was going to be a traditional performance and be just completely caught off guard. I made it in all the letters that I sent home, in all the dojo messages and everything. It was, this is an interactive event. We would love for you to join us. We would love for you to, to come up and do some movement with us. And I always made it very clear in the letters is, due to the nature of this event, comfortable clothes and tennis shoes are encouraged. Because yes, I love dressing up. I love seeing the kids dressed up for the performance and being so excited. But if we are not dressing for what we're actually going to do, that's again another disconnect. So I want to be very clear from the very beginning that this is going to be an active event. I hope this episode has inspired you to, for nothing else, try something new, whether or not it be a family folk dance night or just adding more folk dance repertoire into your curriculum. I think that there is just so much value in movement. The ADHD person inside me will always be pro movement, but also just the curricular concepts, and just there are just so many reasons to include movement. So especially if you have the space, like, I'll be honest, I'm so blessed with the space that I have. I would be doing a disservice to my classroom if I did not use that for movement. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the world to us if you were to leave us a review wherever you're listening. It helps us understand what kind of topics you're looking for more of, and helps us make the podcast exactly what you need to be, so that you can get some content-specific PD on your way to work. If you haven't joined us already, I'd like to invite you to join us inside That Music Teacher community. Each month inside the community, you'll get content-specific professional development led by myself or other expert guests, as well as a community of other elementary music teachers that just understand where we're coming from, so that we can get off of Music Teacher Island and get that PD, get that, professional learning community that you actually want to be a part of. If you haven't joined us, go ahead and check out the link in the description or the show notes wherever you're listening to this, or you can head over to thatmusicteacher.com/TMT community. With that being said, we put out new episodes every Wednesday, so be sure to hit follow or subscribe wherever you're listening so that you don't miss any of our new episodes. I hope you have a wonderful week. And if no one has told you lately, thank you so much for making an impact in the lives of our students, and thank you so much for spreading the love of music.